My name is Danielle Mercer. I was 32 when I discovered that the man I planned to marry had assigned an expiration date to our relationship. 6 months. That was how long Brandon intended to remain my husband before divorcing me, taking the house I had spent 6 years saving for and turning my devastation into social media content. The strangest part was that I did not uncover his plan by searching his phone or hiring someone to follow him. I heard it while sitting in my truck with the engine running, one hand still resting on the door handle, but I am getting ahead of myself. I worked as a fleet operations manager for a regional freight company. My job was making sure trucks, drivers, and cargo arrived where they were supposed to, without expensive delays or unexpected detours. It was not glamorous, but it paid around $97,000 a year. I liked dependable things: schedules, maintenance records, savings accounts, people who meant what they said. Brandon Hale was almost my complete opposite. At 29, he worked as a community coordinator for a wellness cafe chain that sold $18 kale drinks beneath handwritten signs about healing energy. He earned approximately $52,000 a year and spent money as though a luxury sponsorship was always one email away. His real passion was his online presence. When we met, he had around 2,000 Instagram followers. By the time we became engaged, he had reached 4,600 and behaved as though he were managing a global media company. He photographed every meal before eating it. He posted outfits with captions such as, "Effortless Monday," even when I had watched him change shirts 7 times. He talked about pivoting his personal brand and compared his engagement statistics to celebrities whose names he casually mentioned as though they were his professional competitors. I used to find it charming. We met 4 years earlier at a crowded coffee shop downtown. I was working through lunch when he pointed at the empty chair across from me. "Is anyone sitting here?" "No." He sat down, thanked me, and began talking before his coffee had cooled. Within 5 minutes, I knew about his childhood, his job, the roommate he disliked, and his dream of becoming a full-time content creator. Brandon made an ordinary Tuesday feel less ordinary. That was his gift. He could make you believe something important was always about to happen. When he told me he wanted to start a YouTube channel, I helped him. I learned basic editing software, bought him better lighting, and stayed awake after long shifts reviewing videos that usually received fewer than 50 views. "You really think I could make this work?" he asked one night. "I think you should try." His face softened. "No one has ever believed in me like you do." For a long time, that sentence meant everything to me. Our first year was genuinely happy. We explored the city, cooked terrible meals together, and spent Sunday mornings drinking coffee in bed. He met my parents and charmed them immediately. I met his parents, Diane and Frank, who seemed relieved that their son had found someone stable. During the second year, his hobby became the center of our life. Dates became photo sessions. Weekend trips were selected according to how visually appealing the hotel looked. If I took a picture and the angle did not sharpen his jaw correctly, we repeated it until it did. "Just one more," he would say. One more usually meant 15. By the third year, I had started feeling like the unpaid employee of a tiny company that had no revenue. Still, I told myself everyone needed a passion. Some people restored old cars. Brandon documented coffee foam. I ignored the way he checked comments while I spoke. I ignored how often he described experiences as content opportunities. I ignored the growing suspicion that he enjoyed displaying our relationship more than living inside it. Then came year 4. I proposed at the restaurant where we had shared our first real date. I arranged flowers, requested the corner table, and waited until dessert before getting down on one knee. Brandon covered his mouth, his eyes filled with tears. "Yes," he whispered. "Of course. Yes." For several seconds, I believed the man from the coffee shop had returned. Then he looked at the photograph the waiter had taken. "Could we do it again?" I thought he was joking. My hand covered part of the ring, and the lighting makes my skin look washed out. So I got back down on one knee. That should have been the moment I stopped everything. Instead, I smiled for the second photograph. Brandon posted about our engagement for an entire week. There were close-ups of the ring, photographs beside flowers he purchased specifically as props, and a carefully staged picture of his hand resting against my chest. His follower count rose by almost 400. He was thrilled. Not long afterward, we began discussing buying a home. I rented a one-bedroom apartment in Forest Hills. Brandon shared a studio with a roommate he complained about almost daily. With our combined incomes, buying seemed more sensible than continuing to rent. I had saved $85,000 over 6 years. Brandon had approximately $12,000. We found a 3-bedroom ranch in Bayside listed for $470,000. It needed paint, new cabinets, and some repairs, but the structure was solid. I could see us there. I imagined Sunday breakfasts, a small office for Brandon, perhaps children one day. I imagined a future that felt stable enough to trust. The offer was accepted. Although I was contributing almost the entire down payment, we agreed that both names would be on the deed. "We're getting married," I told my mother when she questioned it. "There shouldn't be a difference between mine and his." She studied me for a moment. "Just make sure he believes that too." Brandon began posting photographs of the house before we had signed the final documents. First-time homeowner. Building an empire. Proof that manifestation works. His follower count climbed past 5,000. He created renovation boards, posted paint samples, and spoke about our new chapter, although he rarely asked what I wanted the rooms to look like. 3 weeks before our bank meeting, everything changed. It was a Tuesday in mid-October. I had taken half the day off to organize financial documents. Brandon texted around noon saying Caleb and Nolan were coming to my apartment for a few hours. I finished early and drove home around 3. My apartment faced the parking lot. The living room window was slightly open. When I pulled into my usual space, I could hear voices drifting down. I reached for my phone to tell Brandon I was home. Then I heard him say, "Once that house has my name on it, I'm done with her." My hand stopped. Caleb laughed. "You're really going through with it?" "4 years of pretending I care about freight routes," Brandon replied. 4 years of listening to her family talk about trucks and retirement accounts. I deserve credit for surviving this long. Their laughter floated through the window. I turned off the engine. Nolan asked, "But Danielle's name will be on the deed too." "My dad knows a lawyer. There are ways around that after we're married. I document that she's never home, claim emotional neglect, make it look like I contributed more than she did. But she's putting in almost all the down payment. She won't be able to prove what happened inside the marriage." My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Brandon continued in the calm, organized tone people use when explaining a business plan. "I file 6 months after the wedding, long enough that it doesn't look suspicious, short enough that I'm still under 30 when I'm single again." "That's brutal," Caleb said, sounding impressed rather than disturbed. "It's strategic. Danielle is already at her ceiling. Fleet operations is as far as she'll ever go. I'm building something. Once I'm a divorced homeowner posting about escaping a controlling woman, the story goes viral." "And how are you going to leave her?" Nolan asked. "At a family dinner. Both sides there. I'll announce it publicly." Caleb laughed again. "She'll lose it." "I know. Danielle acts tough, but she cries when she's hurt. That's the whole point. I want the reaction." For several seconds, I heard nothing except the faint vibration of traffic behind me. 4 years. 4 years of supporting him, photographing him and reassuring him after every rejected sponsorship request. 4 years of introducing him to my family. $85,000. A house. A proposal I had repeated because the first photograph was not flattering enough. And to Brandon, all of it had been preparation for a 6-month marriage and a viral breakup. I expected to feel rage. Instead, something inside me became frighteningly still. Brandon had made one critical mistake. He had revealed his strategy before receiving the house. I restarted the truck and drove to a coffee shop 3 blocks away. For 2 hours, I sat in the corner with a black coffee growing cold between my hands. I did not cry. I planned. At 5:30, I texted him, "Running late. I'll be home after 6. Have fun with the guys." His answer arrived immediately. "Okay, babe. Love you. Just having guy talk." When I returned, Brandon was standing in my kitchen, humming as he scrolled through paint colors. He kissed my cheek. "How was your day?" "Boring paperwork." "We're so close," he said, smiling at his phone. "I can't believe we're about to be homeowners." Homeowners. Plural. I looked at the man I had loved and finally understood how easily he could lie while looking directly into my eyes. "I've been thinking," I said. "Maybe we should delay the house." His smile disappeared. "What?" "Just for a few months. We already made an offer. We haven't finalized everything. We'll lose the earnest money." "About 5,000, I said. "Better than making a mistake that costs us much more." His eyes narrowed. "Where is this coming from?" "I want to be certain we're ready." "We are ready." "Then waiting shouldn't destroy us." He stared at me for a long moment, perhaps wondering how much I knew. Then he forced a laugh. "You're just nervous." "Maybe." We ate dinner in silence. When he left around 9, he hugged me longer than usual. I waited until his car disappeared. The next morning, I called the real estate agent and withdrew our offer. Then I called my mother. "I need you to arrange a family dinner Friday night." "Both families?" "Everyone." She went quiet. "Danielle, what happened?" "I'll explain Friday." "Are you safe?" For the first time since hearing Brandon through that window, emotion pressed against my throat. "Yes," I said. But I almost wasn't. After the call, I sent Brandon a message inviting him to an engagement celebration at the Manhattan steakhouse his mother loved. His response came less than a minute later. "That's perfect. I bought a new suit. This will be amazing for the engagement photos." I stared at the message. Brandon believed Friday would give him more content. He had no idea he was walking into the public breakup he had designed for me. Only this time, I would control the ending. I arrived at the steakhouse 15 minutes early. My parents came first, followed by Rowan, Levi, and their spouses. They all knew something was wrong, but only my mother asked, "Are you sure about this?" "No," I said, "but I'm sure about why I'm doing it." Brandon's parents arrived just before 7. Diane carried a small engagement gift, while Frank looked as though he had come directly from work. Then Brandon entered. He wore a charcoal suit, polished shoes, and the expression of a man already imagining the photographs. He greeted everyone warmly before slipping an arm around my waist. "You did all this for us?" "For both families." He smiled and kissed my cheek. "The lighting is perfect. We should get a group picture." Later, dinner began normally. That was the hardest part. Frank asked about the home inspection. Diane mentioned furniture for the guest room. Brandon talked about how well homeownership content performed online, as though the house already belonged to him. I waited until everyone had food in front of them. Then I set down my fork. "I asked everyone here because I have an announcement." Brandon straightened beside me, his face lighting up. "Brandon and I are no longer getting married." The table went silent. His smile froze. "What?" "The engagement is over." He searched my face, waiting for me to laugh. "Danielle, this isn't funny." "I'm not joking." He looked around the table, suddenly aware of every pair of eyes on him. "Can we talk outside?" "No. Whatever this is, we don't need to do it here." "You were planning to do it here." His face changed. "Only slightly, but enough." "What are you talking about?" "I came home early Tuesday." The color disappeared from his face. "I was parked beneath my apartment window. It was open. I heard you talking to Caleb and Nolan." Brandon went still. Diane looked between us. "What did he say?" I kept my eyes on him. "He said that once his name was on the house, he was done with me." Frank's expression hardened. "That isn't what happened," Brandon said quickly. "You said you spent 4 years pretending to care about my work. You said you would marry me, document that I was absent, claim emotional neglect, and file for divorce 6 months later." Diane covered her mouth. "You also said you wanted to announce it in front of both families because you believed I would cry." My voice tightened. "You wanted the reaction for content." Brandon stared at me. For the first time in 4 years, he looked frightened without being able to hide it behind charm. "You're humiliating me," he whispered. "You plan to do far worse." I was venting. You had a timeline. We were joking. You discussed legal strategy. That doesn't mean I was going to do it. Frank turned toward him. Did you say you plan to divorce her after 6 months? Brandon looked down. I was angry. That is not an answer. Brandon's jaw tightened. Yes, but... Diane closed her eyes. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. Brandon turned back to me. You were spying on me. My window was open. You were discussing how to take my house loud enough for the parking lot to hear. It wasn't your house. It was ours. No, I said. It was almost yours. He frowned. What does that mean? I canceled the purchase Wednesday morning. His face went blank. You can't do that. I already did. What about the earnest money? We lost $5,000. His voice rose. You threw away $5,000 without asking me? I saved $85,000. Losing 5 is better than losing everything. He pushed his chair back so hard it scraped across the floor. You ruined my life. No. I stopped you from ruining mine. My mother looked at him coldly. You should leave. Brandon stared at her. I loved your daughter. No, she said. You loved what she could provide. Diane stood and gathered her purse. Frank rose beside her. Come on, Brandon. I'm not leaving with you. Frank's voice hardened. Yes, you are. Brandon looked around the table, waiting for someone to defend him. Nobody did. As Diane guided him toward the exit, he turned back. You're going to regret this. I already regret enough. Then he was gone. Frank remained behind for a moment. I had no idea, he said quietly. I believe you. He nodded, unable to meet my eyes, and followed his family outside. My mother squeezed my hand beneath the table. You did the right thing. It doesn't feel right. You saved yourself. That doesn't always feel good. When I returned home, Brandon's belongings were already packed into 3 boxes, 4 years reduced to clothes, camera equipment, shoes, and candles he had bought for photographs but never lit. I carried the boxes downstairs, changed the lock code, and blocked his number. By Saturday morning, I had 43 missed calls. His messages moved from confusion to anger, then bargaining. Please call me. You misunderstood. I love you. You destroyed everything. You owe me a conversation. I ignored them. Brandon had already posted a carefully staged crying photograph from his childhood bedroom, describing himself as someone betrayed by the person he trusted most. There was no mention of the house, no mention of 6 months, no mention of what I had heard through the open window. Around noon, my buzzer sounded. Brandon stood outside with Caleb. I need my things, he said through the intercom. I left the boxes downstairs. They're gone. You should have collected them. Caleb leaned toward the speaker. Stop being childish and let him upstairs. A few clothes and toiletries remained, so I gave them 5 minutes. Brandon walked toward the bedroom while Caleb stayed behind, watching me. You're going to end up alone, he said. Because I didn't let your friend steal a house? He wasn't stealing anything. You laughed while he planned it. He was unhappy. Unhappy people leave. They don't design divorce strategies around someone else's savings. Brandon returned carrying a garbage bag. His expression had softened. I'm sorry. You're sorry you got caught. I did love you. Maybe, just not enough to stop. He swallowed. Is there really no chance? No. His face hardened again. Fine. Caleb followed him out, brushing my shoulder as he passed. I locked the door behind them. Around 6 that evening, I went downstairs to my truck. The damage was visible from halfway across the lot. Deep scratches covered the driver's side panel. A word had been carved through the black paint, exposing the metal beneath it. I opened the building's security application and rewound the footage. Brandon's Honda had entered the lot shortly after 5. Brandon stepped out with Caleb. They argued beside the car. Caleb pointed toward my truck. Brandon hesitated, then took out his key. I watched him drag it across the paint one deliberate line at a time while Caleb stood watch. When Brandon finished, Caleb photographed the damage. I downloaded the video and saved it in 3 places: The repair estimate came to approximately $3,000. Using my work phone, I sent Brandon one message. I have high-definition footage of you and Caleb damaging my truck. It shows your faces, your license plate, and everything from beginning to end. Send me $3,000 within 24 hours, or I file a police report. He called almost immediately. You can't prove that was me. I have the video. You're bluffing. I can send you a copy. Silence. You wouldn't go to the police. Try me. I don't have $3,000. You should have thought about that before using your key. His voice broke. Danielle, please. That word used to change my decisions. Not anymore. 24 hours. I ended the call. 20 minutes later, the payment arrived. $3,000. The note attached read, "You are a horrible person." I accepted it and saved a screenshot. A few minutes later, I looked down from my window. Brandon and Caleb were arguing beside the Honda. Brandon held up his phone, likely showing the payment receipt. Caleb shouted back. Brandon shoved him. Caleb shoved him harder, sending him against the car door. After another minute of yelling, Caleb drove away. Brandon stood alone in the parking lot, staring up at my apartment with hatred written through his entire body. Then he left. I closed the blinds. I thought that was the end of it. 3 days later, Caleb appeared outside my apartment alone, and he was not dressed like someone who had come to apologize. When I looked at the security camera that Wednesday afternoon, I almost laughed. Caleb stood outside my apartment wearing fitted jeans, an expensive jacket, and enough cologne that I could smell it the moment I opened the door. He smiled confidently. Can we talk? I doubt it. I just wanted to apologize. Against my better judgment, I let him upstairs, though I never invited him inside. I remained in the doorway with my arms folded while he leaned casually against the wall. I've been thinking, he said. Brandon ruined everything. You deserved better. That realization came awfully late. I shouldn't have encouraged him. No. I actually always thought you were the better one. There it was. The real reason he had come. He stepped a little closer. Maybe I could take you out sometime. Fresh start. I stared at him for several seconds before shaking my head. You watched your best friend plan to steal my house. He opened his mouth. You laughed. It was complicated. No, it wasn't. He tried another smile. People make mistakes. You're trying to replace Brandon before the relationship is even cold. His face stiffened. I just thought. You thought I'd reward betrayal with another betrayal. Before he could answer, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Brandon rounded the corner. He froze. His eyes moved from Caleb to me, then back to Caleb. What are you doing here? Caleb immediately stepped away from my door. I came to apologize. In that outfit? It isn't what you think. Brandon laughed bitterly. You're trying to sleep with my ex-fiancé. She isn't your fiancé anymore. The hallway became silent. Then Brandon shoved Caleb. Caleb shoved him back. You're blaming me? Caleb snapped. You're the one who couldn't keep your mouth shut. You encouraged the whole thing. You got greedy. Brandon swung first. Within seconds, they were wrestling against the hallway wall, grabbing shirts, throwing clumsy punches, and shouting accusations loud enough for neighbors to open their doors. I simply took out my phone and recorded everything. After less than a minute, they separated, breathing heavily. Caleb wiped blood from the corner of his lip. You destroyed your own life, he said. Don't blame me, because your plan failed. He walked toward the stairs without looking back. Brandon remained where he was. His suit was wrinkled. His hair was a mess. He looked nothing like the man who had once rehearsed engagement photos. He looked at me with exhausted anger. This is all because of you. No. I locked my phone after saving the video. This is because of choices you made long before I heard that conversation. He stood there another moment before leaving without another word. That was the last time Brandon ever stood outside my apartment. The following morning, I organized everything into one folder. The audio timeline of the conversation I had written from memory, the restaurant witnesses, The parking lot security footage, the $3,000 payment, the threatening messages, the hallway fight. The courthouse clerk flipped through the documents and looked up at me. You came prepared. I had to. By that afternoon, a temporary restraining order had been signed. Brandon was ordered to remain 500 feet away from me until the hearing. A week later, my supervisor called me into his office. Apparently, Diane had contacted the company, claiming I had publicly humiliated her son without reason. Instead of reacting emotionally, my employer reviewed every piece of evidence. HR documented the situation in case Brandon attempted to interfere with my career. When I left the meeting, my job was safer than it had ever been. 2 days later, Frank called. His voice sounded older. I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. I should have seen who my son was becoming. There was a long silence. I truly believed he loved you. So did I. He quietly wished me well before hanging up. It was the only phone call that didn't leave me angry. 3 weeks later, we stood in court. Brandon denied damaging my truck. The judge asked for the security footage. The courtroom fell silent as the video played across the screen. There was Brandon, walking toward my truck, looking around, dragging his key across the paint one deliberate letter at a time. When the video ended, the judge looked directly at him. Do you still wish to deny this? Brandon lowered his eyes. No. The judge granted a 2-year restraining order, noting the deliberate vandalism, harassment, and escalating behavior after the breakup. Outside the courthouse, Brandon never looked at me. He simply walked away beside his attorney, shoulders slumped, his online confidence finally gone. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I checked his Instagram one final time. Almost every engagement photograph had disappeared. The house posts were gone. The captions about destiny had vanished. His follower count had dropped dramatically. His newest upload was nothing more than a sunset with the words, "Starting over." 12 likes. 3 comments from relatives. I closed the app. That chapter no longer belonged to me. The truck had been repaired using Brandon's money. My savings remained intact. The house had never been purchased. The man who once believed he could build a career from my heartbreak had lost the relationship, the house, his reputation, and the audience he valued more than honesty. As for me, for the first time in 4 years, my apartment was completely quiet, and I finally realized peace was worth far more than any dream home I almost bought with the wrong person.